Hello and welcome to the Appleby Hour. I'm Appleby, and today I'd like to talk about, address my fellow Americans on the subject of Civil War. It gets thrown around a lot these days, lots of opining on the Second Civil War, and, I get why. I get why. It's a fun idea. It's an interesting sort of scenario, but it's never going to happen, guys. It simply isn't possible here anymore. We've mended that flaw. Our house is no longer divided, and so it cannot be divided against itself. And it is precisely because we have already had a civil war. Now, let me explain. Prior to the Civil War, it was these United States, those ones over there. You see them. Uh, these days, it's the United States. It's we've become a single thing. That was what the Civil War kind of put an end to. It was, the people who, the South will rise again, the Confederate sympathizers that are alive today. There's plenty of them down south. They talk about the war of northern aggression, that it was really about states' rights. And when the left responds, a state's right to do what? The answer is slavery. They have a point. They're absolutely right. It wasn't not a war about slavery, but it was also a war about the federal government. And the way that war ended, with the Union prevailing, guaranteed that our federal government was centralized. Because before the Civil War, the military, the centralized federal military, very, very small, not professional in any way. It was a lot of the people in it were there because of political ties and stuff. It was a real ragtag operation. The majority of the military was state militias under the control of governments or even private militias. And so that's how each state was able to individually secede, because each state had its own military force. Now, in America today, that is not the case. The military goes all the way up to the top, and you if you were like the National Guard in any particular state and you tried to secede, the rest of the military would come crashing down on you. It simply isn't possible. Now, I know people will say it's like, well, conservatives have plenty of guns on their own, right? And that is true. That is true. It's not as if they're totally helpless. But it's not a civil war. There could be like insurgents and terrorists, resistance fighters, revolutionaries, rebels, whatever you want to call them. And they could hide out in the hills of Appalachia, and they could hide out in the Rocky Mountains. But that is really about it. That is the limit of what can be done as far as military action from like a civilian level against the U.S. government. It will never rise to the level of a civil war. It could, a terrorist cell does not a civil war make. It it really is just that simple. Like I want to keep going on because YouTube wants me to, but it's just that simple. Back before the Civil War, we were individual states which were loosely united, and it was possible for each state to make its own, to determine its own destiny, right? But because of the Civil War, because so many states clung to this evil institution of slavery, we decided that no, actually, human rights in our country are federal. There's no question about that. That's how it works. And in order for that to work, you need to centralize power. That's what a state is. It's an entity that has a monopoly on legitimate use of force, legitimate violence. And these days, that's all the way up to the president. So, like, it is totally possible. Well, actually, you know what? That's the next video. That's the next video. A takeover is possible. A civil war is not. A civil war is totally off the table, totally the realm of fiction. We would need to have significant societal collapse before that's even possible. You know, maybe in the 2040s on, you know, depending on how things go. Yeah, but that's as soon as I could see it even potentially happening, like hypothetically. It's just it's out of the question. Yeah, that's the point I want to make. You know, if you disagree, please boost my numbers and share it around. Thank you for watching.